Welcome to Faithful Reflections Christian Chronicles. I'm your host, Carolyn, and today we're concluding our three-part series on praying through pain, honest conversations with God. In our first episode, we explored how the Psalms give us permission for raw, authentic prayer. Last week, we examined Psalm 88 and how to pray faithfully when darkness doesn't lift. Today, we're turning to the book of Lamentations to discover the power of communal lament. Most of us think of prayer as a private activity, just me and God, alone in my bedroom or car. And there's certainly a place for that kind of intimate conversation. But Scripture also shows us another dimension of honest prayer lament that happens in community. The book of Lamentations was never meant to be read alone. It was a liturgical text, meant to be spoken, chanted, and prayed together by God's people as they processed collective tragedy. After the destruction of Jerusalem, as they surveyed the literal ashes of their city, they didn't grieve in isolation. They gathered to voice their pain together before God. In our individualistic culture, we've largely lost this practice. When tragedy strikes, whether it's a church scandal, a community disaster, or national trauma, we lack the spiritual vocabulary to grieve together. We send thoughts and prayers, we post on social media, but we rarely create sacred space to collectively bring our confusion, anger, and sorrow before God. Lamentation shows us a different way. Listen to these powerful words from chapter 2. Arise, cry out in the night, at the beginning of the night watches. Pour out your heart like water before the presence of the Lord. Lift your hands to Him for the lives of your children. This is not a call to private prayer. It's an invitation to public communal expression of grief. The author understood that some burdens are too heavy to carry alone, some questions too difficult to wrestle with in isolation. This biblical pattern of communal lament offers us three powerful gifts. First, it validates our shared pain. When we lament together, we acknowledge that suffering isn't just an individual problem to solve, but a communal reality to bear witness to. Think about how Jesus wept openly at Lazarus' tomb, even though he knew resurrection was coming. He validated the real pain of death before demonstrating his power over it. Second, communal lament prevents isolation in our suffering. The Book of Lamentations gives voice to different perspectives, from ordinary citizens to city leaders. No one was left to process trauma alone. In a culture that often privatizes grief with messages like, "You handle your business, I'll handle mine," biblical lament reminds us that we're designed to carry burdens together. Third, shared lament creates space for shared hope. Throughout Lamentations, glimmers of hope emerge not despite the honesty about pain but because of it. The most famous passage in the book, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness," comes right in the middle of deep lament. Hope doesn't replace grief. It grows alongside it when we create space for both. So what might this look like in our lives today? I think of a church in our city that experienced profound loss when 3 of their young people died in a car accident. Rather than rushing to theological explanations or immediately focusing on heaven, the leaders created a special service of lament. They read passages from Psalms and Lamentations. They left space for silence. They provided ways for people to express their grief tangibly through writing prayers, lighting candles, even creating art. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Did it fix everything? No. But it created sacred space for their community to bring authentic pain before God together. And many reported that it was the first time they felt they could be honest about their doubts and questions in church. Months later, as healing slowly began, their celebration felt more authentic because they hadn't skipped the necessary step of lament. Let me offer 3 practical ways we can reclaim the biblical practice of communal lament. First, create intentional space for honest prayer in your small groups or family devotions. Don't rush to fix every problem or spiritualize every struggle. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is sit with someone in their pain and say, "Yes, this is terrible. I'm here with you." Second, advocate for elements of lament in your church's worship. Historically, Christian liturgy included corporate confession, prayers of lament, and recognition of suffering. These weren't seen as bringing down the mood, but as creating authentic space for the full range of human experience before God. Third, practice borrowing words when your own fail. One of the beautiful things about Lamentations and the Psalms is that they give us language when we don't know what to say. In times of deep grief, try reading these ancient prayers aloud with others. Their words can become your words, connecting your specific pain to the universal human experience of suffering. Brothers and sisters, I believe one of the greatest gifts the church can offer our broken world is sacred space for authentic grief. In a culture that either denies pain or exploits it, we can demonstrate a third way, acknowledging suffering honestly while holding it in the context of God's unfailing love. The final verse of Lamentations asks a haunting question: "Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days as of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and you remain exceedingly angry with us." It ends with a question, not an answer. And yet the very act of bringing that question to God together is itself an act of profound faith. As we conclude this series on praying through pain, my prayer is that you'll discover the freedom of honest conversation with God, both in your private prayers and in community with others. May you find, as countless believers have throughout history, that God is big enough for your questions, present enough for your pain, and loving enough to meet you exactly as you are. Thank you for joining me for this series on Faithful Reflections Christian Chronicles. Next week, we'll begin a new series called Heroes of Faith, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Impact, where we'll explore the lives of lesser-known biblical figures whose faith transformed their circumstances. Until then, remember that your honest prayers, however messy or unresolved, are precious to the God who collects your tears in his bottle and holds you close, even in your darkest moments. This is Carolyn with Faithful Reflections, reminding you that authentic faith makes room for both lament and praise.